Skin of the Sinless, Part 3. The holy man climbed through the seemingly eternal darkness, covered in his and the vine's blood, for what felt like an eternity. He climbed up until the face of the iron mask clanked against a ceiling, where the vine suddenly ended. The holy man swung his claymore up with his forearm that was torn through to the muscle and caught it in his hand. He then jumped down onto the stone-cold floor of the labyrinth as his arm and leg began to heal. Moans and groaning could be heard throughout the passage that had a random assortment of items placed against the walls leading straight to the garden. The first item he had come across was a painting on the wall. It had a male and a female contorted into a frame while being intimate with a canvas made of stretched skin that was woven into the bodies of the couple with tendons. The frame shifted and moaned while they dripped blood onto the canvas that took the shape of a bleeding heart. Lost souls that had given in to their greatest sin only to relinquish their bodies and humanity for eternal pleasure. So much suffering. The holy man used his free hand to rip the painting from the wall and pried the two souls apart. Their sins burned themselves onto his skin, and he pressed forward to the next item, while tears fell. It was a male rearranged into a dresser, with his head sitting on the top, groaning in pleasure. His drawers vigorously went in and out on their own, with blood and pus seeping out from the sides and onto the ground. The holy man slid his claymore through the top of the man's head to silence him, then gave it a turn. Another soul, another sin, another scar, and another tear. A bed sat in the middle of the passage and went from wall to wall, blocking his path. He approached the bed with caution, seeing that it too was a monstrosity. It was composed of 4 men and 2 women. The men's bodies were spiraled into bedposts that stood at each corner, with one of the women's bodies stretched out into a mattress with her face in the middle. The other woman was made into a headboard with her face in the middle as well, and her breasts placed at the head of the bed like pillows, all bearing faces of pleasure while their bodies squirmed. The holy man had enough of the heresy set before him and cut the bed in half. At the drop of his claymore, the bed screamed in pleasure and pain, clearing the way for the holy man and adding yet another handful of sins to his body. Tears fell from under the holy man's mask as he cut through the remaining items to end their torment. Each one left the word lust on his body until they were no more. The holy man entered the chamber of the garden once more and was greeted by the little girl. "You made it. Now we can continue our conversation. Please come and take a dip. You're filthy." The holy man looked down at his scarred, naked body that was covered in blood and headed in the direction of the pond. As before, a different group of children were present. This time he entered the chamber, and then the garden itself seemed even more beautiful than before. The holy man stepped into the pond and submerged himself in the water while the little girl swung on her swing. "You know, it's quite rude to leave in the middle of a story," said the little girl, clearing her throat. Where was I? Oh, that's right. So the being merged us into one and made us whole. It let us push on as one mind, one body, but two souls. I was no longer a liability, and he was free to climb the tower, forever feeling my touch. I was also no longer scared. The little girl paused when the holy man exited the pond. Not many make it past this floor, as they are all welcomed. It won't stop your progress, and neither will I, for the sins and the tower have an agenda of their own, said the little girl, pointing at the dark archway leading to the next chamber. The holy man rested his claymore against his shoulder and pushed on. He passed through the archway into an empty chamber made of writhing flesh. The walls and floor were made of countless bodies, melted together as they squirmed and moaned as one. Their hands reached up, groping the holy man all over where he stood, while he scanned the room for the being the little girl spoke of. The holy man pointed his claymore downward and plunged it into the living floor, making the bodies quiver below him as they retreated from his blade. He then lifted his claymore from out of the ground to watch the stone floor be covered again with the bodies of many. Out of curiosity, the holy man made a circle around him with his blade, with the same effect, but this time a voice mix of male and female echoed throughout the chamber. "Please do not hurt my children. They just want to entice you." The being the little girl spoke of materialized before him from the flesh below. The creature was a male on its left side and a female on the right. It had the genitals of both sexes, with one inside the other, and lacked a face altogether, except for a large blue eye that sat in the middle of its head. The skin of the being was a porcelain white that secreted a violet viscous from the top of its head and down its back to the floor below, where it blended with the room itself. It sent a wave of ripples from its head, through its hair and down into the floor as it spoke. "You may refer to me as Master, but I feel like you know what I am, Old One." The wave of ripples flowed into the fleshy floor below and made their way to the feet of the holy man. A lesser version of the being began to materialize at his feet and stop at his waist as it gazed up at him with the face of one of the poor lost souls she had already taken for her own. The body in front of the holy man spoke and prodded at his crotch with his finger, while the hands of many caressed his lower half. "So, there's no need for a formal introduction. Are you not aroused?" The holy man lifted his claymore that was resting at his side, drove it down through the being in front of him and into the stone floor below. The being dissolved back into the fleshy floor and created a circle around the holy man's blade. With a twist of his sword, he crumbled the ground under his blade and gripped his claymore with the flat side facing the humanoid creature. "You disrespect lust in its own domain." Do you not seek Joe? The holy man stepped in front of his claymore with his left foot, then used his right to help his blade throw the crumbled stone below at Lust. Lust's body immediately lost shape, and the eye dropped into the sludge below. Waves rippled in all directions, but the mass of one in particular caught the holy man's attention. The holy man broke into a sprint to the ripple, heading to the closest wall. With his blade at his side, he raised the claymore overhead and brought it down in front of the one he assumed was the avatar of Lust, to cut off its path, and that he did. The holy man then kicked up where the ripple had stopped before his blade. The eye of Lust was launched into the hands, reaching out of the wall, with the holy man following up by bringing his blade around his side. A lesser Lust materialized itself in between the holy man's claymore and the eye of Lust to block the attack, but his blade stayed true. The holy man's claymore passed right through its body as it wore a face of passion and cut the eye in half. While the hands were retracting into the wall, the moans turned to screams, making the holy man's eardrums burst and bled down from under his iron mask. The holy man's claymore clashed into the wall and crumbled a portion of it to reveal a corridor hidden behind it. The fleshy borders of the chamber went flat and fell from the walls and ceiling onto the floor, then spilled into the neighbouring corridor. The holy man rested his claymore against his shoulder and lurched through the sludge to the next passage. It was a skywalk with windows along both sides and an iron gate on the other end. The holy man walked into the middle and peered off both sides. Each side was a side of the tower he was climbing, and he was now on the 4th level. When he looked off to each side, there was nothing but the curvature of the tower. He looked out to see the sun setting over the snowy mountains. He travelled to get to the tower. His hearing came back just in time to listen to Lust's screams die out as the word lust illuminated on his body, then faded away, while a tear fell from under his iron mask. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Stay tuned for part 4. If you've enjoyed tonight's scary story, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any scary stories, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.